I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 60. Today in the show, Dan and I are bearing all and discussing our greatest failures and mistakes while deer hunting. Enjoy. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by our friends at Sitka Gear. Now, today on the show, it's just me and my co-host Dan, but it's still going to be an interesting episode, I think, because today we're pulling all the skeletons out of the closet and sharing our biggest failures, screw-ups, and mistakes while deer hunting. And trust me, there are plenty of those to choose from. Wouldn't you say, Dan?
I'm glad you finished that sentence with while deer hunting.
Because this could be a really long podcast if it was even more than that, huh?
If it was life in general.
That could be like a 17-part series.
Exactly.
But we've got a lot to talk about on the deer hunting front, too.
Mm-hmm. Can I one-up you for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
I checked my trail cameras this weekend, and you didn't.
I know. I'm super jealous, too.
Yeah. I had a pretty decent pull. Not my best pull ever, but I have one buck that is back from, the past 4 years we've been chasing him, and he's pretty identifiable by some kind of sickness or infection he has on his back legs. I'm not sure what it is, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him much. He's back, and then I got a pretty cool, non-typical picture that looks like he could be a giant as well. So I'm pretty pumped to see the next card pull next month.
Heck yeah, man, that's awesome. And you got to kill Ryan Iberg because that buck, he looks...
The buck, right?
The buck, yeah.
The buck, okay.
Not your friend. Not your friend. Ryan's a good guy. But that, like you said, that thing going on with his back foot, or is it both feet now?
Yeah, he's had it. He's had both feet for 3 years. This is the third year he's had it.
Yeah, you got to take him out of his misery.
Yeah.
He's a heck of a deer, too. Now, that other big non-typical, could that potentially be the one and only?
Yep, that could be Mark Kenyon. I'm not sure. I think I have it narrowed down to 2 bucks. It looks like he's going to be fairly narrow. I mean, he's going to have a lot of mass. And it could be another buck that I've been watching for the past couple of years and I've named him Dork. But he has an extremely huge body. And not, last year and the year before, he had some good mass to him and some non-typical points, but, maybe at most 140 for a size range. This year, he could blow up to who knows what. And but, it's way too early to tell. You can only guess at this point.
Yeah. He's got big split brow tines coming on, right?
Oh, he's got one brow has a triple already and the other side split. And who knows what else it's going to do.
Oh, that's awesome. I love split brow tines. All right.
You do?
Here's a question.
Okay.
What would you rather, if you were, if we could be picky here. Would you rather shoot a buck with split brow tines or split G2s?
I passed a buck with split brow tines once, double split brows. So I guess I would rather have a really deep split in the G2, and because that reminds me of Shipwreck.
Yeah, those split G2s are sweet.
Yeah, what about you?
I go through this all the time. Me and a couple of my friends, like whenever we're driving to our hunting properties or down for a hunting trip, we always like spend a good half hour to an hour going through these different like which would you prefer scenarios. And this is a tough one always for me, but I think I'd probably have to go with big split G2s.
Yeah.
I love them all. I love all that kind of non-typical character, but split G2s are just cool. Especially cool. Another thing, like I would love matching flyers off the G2s. Like,
oh boy,
like a big, massive 8-pointer with matching flyers off both G2s. That would be sweet.
I got a trail camera for my birthday in 2006. It was like big batteries, had to use film in it, flash, and all that stuff. And the very first time I got pictures developed, I had probably a 140 class buck with matching flyers off his backside.
Oh, that is sweet.
I lost that picture. It kind of pisses me off.
That's a bummer.
Yeah,
that's a super, super sweet buck. What about, do you prefer super wide bucks or super tall? Tall and narrow?
Dude, I love wide deer. The kind that can't walk through cornrows because their antlers are, getting in the way all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I love wide bucks.
Those are sweet. For some reason, I've got a thing for the super tall, narrow ones, though.
Yeah.
Like, I still haven't I've even had a really good encounter with like a really massive, thick-horned, tight and tall buck. That would be sweet. That's on
so
my bucket
your
list.
ideal buck is tight and tall with a split G2.
Well, I'd say tight and tall. I'm gonna get real picky here.
Okay.
I'm gonna say tight and tall, but like lots of mass. Like I
Lots of mass,
I love a buck that's just like heavy horned. So heavy horned, we'll call him. He's a heavy horned 8-pointer, but like 12-inch G2s, 13-inch G3s. But he's maybe only like 13 inches wide.
Nice.
And he'll have deep splits on his 2s, but then flyers off of his 2s as well, or maybe flyers off his G3s. That's the one I'm looking to shoot this year.
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, you can dream, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So you got your trail camera pull. I still haven't seen any, or I haven't been able to check, but I am itching bad after I saw you post yours and I see different people posting theirs online. I'm getting itchy. So I'm, like I said the other day, I'm starting to watch my deer hunting DVDs and shows online and, just dreaming.
So, did you do anything exciting up there on your little vacation that you're on? Shouldn't call it little. You're gone for 3 months, but anything cool going on up in Idaho?
Yeah, we've been doing some fun stuff. We spent the last 5 days, I think, over on the other side of the mountains from where we live, on the east side of Grand Teton National Park. Spent some time with my wife's family and did some cool hikes, did some kayaking and some gorgeous mountain lakes. So that's been cool. We're heading to Yellowstone in a couple days for an extended stay there and going to do a lot of fly fishing, hopefully, and see some buffalo and all that. So it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to start doing some big backpacking trips here soon, too. So
Cool.
I'll tell you one thing. I will probably be kicking your ass in the mountains this fall because I'm going to be doing nothing but hiking the mountains for 2 months. So I know you're working out, and I know you're going to be in good shape, but I might be a little ahead of the curve on you, Dan.
Hey, man, I wish I could simulate the thin air and the inclines that you're going to be hiking in. You just can't. I don't care how many squats I do or reps on the Stairmaster. You cannot simulate actual environment.
Yeah, and it definitely is different. I mean, You just have to get acclimated and roll with it. So I've got a little unfair advantage, I realize.
Well, maybe you'll break your femur and then we'll be even.
Well, thanks a lot. I have been having a really weird. I've never had any issues with my legs or knees or anything, but I can't remember if I told you this or not. But when I was in Montana in April, I strained something in like one of the tendons. I know nothing about human anatomy, so the tendon or ligament or something behind my right knee. And ever since that point, it's been like my whole leg has started to feel weird and like just like kind of contorted. So I visited like.
Sprain it?
Well, no, I think I hyperextended whatever that thing is behind my knee, whatever ligament or tendon that is, and so I went. Yeah, that might be it. My buddy's a chiropractor, so he took a look at some stuff, and it sounded like that might have been an issue. And then like my hip and knee were kind of out of. I don't know. He did some adjustments, and I've been doing some different stretches and some different things, and it seems to be better. But I was getting really worried that I might have messed something up, and that would mess up my hunts this fall. But it looks like it's doing a lot better now. So
just rub some dirt on it.
Some dirt.
Some dirt.
Yeah.
That's what my grandpa always said. If we ever got hurt, fell down, had a cut, rub some dirt on it.
Did you ever? There's some stand-up comedian who always talked about how his like dad or his grandpa, like whenever he had an issue, he always said to spray Windex on it. I don't remember who that was, but that was his recommendation. But we're rambling.
Yes, we are.
We're rambling. We should get.
What are we talking about today, Mark?
Yeah, we're talking about how we've screwed up, our different mistakes, our different failures. Because just like everybody else listening, you and me, we've made plenty of mistakes over the years. Hopefully, we've learned from a few of them.
Right.
And so what I thought we could do today is kind of bear all and share some of our biggest mistakes and failures with the listeners, talk through those, and maybe between the two of us we can figure out some things that we could learn from those, and maybe we'll all learn something along the way too. So I've got a lot of different examples, and I have like some that are specific instances where I made like a screw up in a specific encounter, and then there's other times where I realize that I've been making a larger mistake over a course of years, and then I finally kind of realized it and changed how I was hunting. So there's a lot of those types of things that over the last for me over the last 5 or 6 years, my hunting style and what I do has changed dramatically. And it's resulted in dramatically different results from a success standpoint too. So there's been a lot of things over this last decade to half decade, for me where I've realized I was making a lot of mistakes and changed that. So we'll talk through some of those things for me, and I'm sure you've got some good examples too, right?
Yeah, I've been making mistakes deer hunting every season. There's no such thing as a perfect. The perfect hunt or the perfect season, because there's always something you can do better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. I don't think anyone can argue with that.
Well, why don't you start it off, Mark?
I think it's a good idea. So I've got a whole list here of different ones. But maybe for me, one of the biggest mistakes that I think I made for a long time was related to, and we've, to a degree, we've talked about this in different little bits and pieces, but maybe we can take a larger stab at it. It is this idea of hunting too much, getting too excited. Like I always depended on the fact that I could hunt harder. For me, it's never been an issue of, am I willing to put in the hours or the time or the days? Like I'll hunt the crap out of it, and I will hunt hard, and I will put in as much time as possible. But I've come to realize that sometimes that can be a mistake in some cases. If you are hunting every single day, but if you only have 2 stand locations and you're hunting those 2 stand locations the entire season, that's actually probably doing a lot more harm than it is good. So for me, I started realizing that hunting smart is a lot more important than hunting hard sometimes. Ideally, you want to be hunting smart and hard at the same time. So an example of this would be, this is one perfect example. As I think I had mentioned to you, for a period of time during high school, the only place I had to bow hunt was behind my parents' house, and that was 3.5 acres of land. So I was working with some real small piece of property there. But I was like, I'm going to hunt so hard because I want to kill a deer, and for me, it was like, if I put in the work, it'll work. And so I had like 2 possible places I could hunt on this 3.5 acres, and I hunted like every single day I could possibly hunt after school or on the weekends. And of course, the first day I went out there, I think, in early October, I saw maybe 6 or 7 does, a couple of young bucks. Day 2 or 3, I maybe saw 3 does. Day 4 and 5, nothing. And then that would be the case all the way until maybe early November when finally you start to see some things. And I think a lot of guys have that experience, right? They go out in the early season, they see a good number of deer, and then it slowly gets worse and worse as you get into October, if you start hunting in October. And, that's where this October lull idea comes from that we've talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, while there are some reasons why there might be some type of lull, a lot of that is hunter created because people like me at that time were hunting really hard, and then they educate all those deer, they spook all those deer, and then when they don't see the deer anymore, they're wondering, oh, this must be this lull, the deer aren't moving anymore. But actually, it's because we got a little overeager, hunted a little bit too much, maybe didn't hunt smart enough, and educated those deer, and now they're starting to move different places or wait till after dark or a lot of different things. So I don't know. It's a very common mistake. It's something we've talked about before. It's something a lot of people, I'm sure, listening have, at some point in their hunting career experienced and then learned from. But it's one that's worth mentioning just because it's maybe for me, it was maybe the biggest realization and the biggest change in my hunting philosophy was when I kind of wrapped my head around that. So I don't know. How about you? Is that something you've experienced or learned about at all?
Yeah, and you make a good point when you say hunting hard versus hunting smart. It's 2 completely different things in my opinion. What I really get a kick out of is the social media out there, and you hear guys go, nobody hunts harder than this guy, or nobody hunts harder than the next guy. If you're meaning time in a tree stand, there are thousands of guys who are hunting as equally hard as you. It just because, and as we all know, just because the end result ends in a buck doesn't mean you're hunting hard or not. I know guys who will go out and hunt maybe 5-6 times a year and lay a big buck down every time because they hunt smart. They wait, they know what they're doing, and they go in at the right time with the right wind on the right access, and they're just, they're patient. And and just like you, man, that's one thing that I have not. I'm a hunter. I love to hunt. So if I know there's a big buck in an area, but he's coming out after dark, and this is one of my actual mistakes, is being aggressive and not using my head and going into an area to chase a buck who's not showing up on a particular trail camera until like midnight, knowing I'm not going to see him, but I'm going in there anyway. It didn't really click for me. I was just kind of wishing, on a whim, maybe he'll show up tonight, maybe he'll show up. And then instead waiting, watching my trail cameras, and then coming out with, going in when he starts getting real close to the sunset or real close to the sunrise.
Yeah, it's tempting. When you know that they're in that area, it's super tempting to go in there. There's an article on Wired to Hunt where I shared some stuff from Bill Winke, who wrote a really great article, and then he shared some different additional responses with me and Wired to Hunt regarding this very topic about the idea of understanding quote-unquote nocturnal bucks, or when a buck might be acting nocturnal, and being smart about when you start hunting him. I'll make sure to link that in this blog post because there's some good stuff there. And like you said, it's if you're not getting daylight action, either that you're observing or that you're getting pictures of, or if you've got really good intel or a really good reason that you think that they might be moving in daylight, you're just hurting things when you go pushing into these areas where you're going to likely spook a deer or leave sign of your presence, and you never had a chance to see him anyways. So
right. I
think for me, it's it's funny. Back I don't know, 6 years ago maybe, when I first started Wired to Hunt 6 or 7 years ago, I was super gung-ho. I wanted to be hunting all the time, and I think I hunted something like, 90 times during a season. Like I hunted every night, I hunted every weekend I could possibly get away. And then this past year, or I think it was well, not 2014, but it'd probably be true for 2014 as well. But 2013 was the first hunting season after I quit my job, my old job. And I thought, okay, I can hunt whenever I want. I've got hunting is my job. I can go anytime I want. But because at that point I had learned that I want to be a lot more selective, I'd rather hunt fewer days with the right conditions versus more days, willy-nilly. And I actually hunted significantly fewer times in 2013 than I did, back in 2009 or whatever, even though I didn't have a regular day job. And it was because I had realized it made a lot more sense to hunt fewer times, but on the right times. The productivity of those sits is so much better when you're hunting smart. I don't remember where I'd heard this, but the analogy of a drone strike. Every hunt should be a drone strike. You should have, done your intel, you've done your research, you should have your intel, you should have a very specific reason and a very specific location of where you think you can make that strike, and then when the conditions are right, you go in like SWAT Team 6 and you kill them. That's how I try to approach my hunting now versus this, shotgun approach of hunting everywhere I can all the time and hope that something goes right.
Right. I'm kind of lucky. I have a lot of property that I can hunt.
You do.
And when it's hunting season, I will be in a tree. But I'm going to be smart about it. Like I've always said, if you want to feel like killing something, go kill a doe. In my area, there's plenty of those. So I'm going to be hunting. If I'm not after a particular buck, I'll be in a place where I might be able to hunt, a doe coming to a food source or, a transition point or, because there's always, I want to fill my freezer.
Yeah.
And at the same time, observation stands as well. So I'm always looking for as much intel as I can get because trail cameras don't tell you as much as your eyes do. So I'll go out a long ways from the area and see, if it's real thick, you really can't do that, but you can set up on a field edge that's 100, 200 yards away where you think some deer might be entering or exiting a food source and just set up shop there and know that you're not going to kill anything, but you will gain information that will assist you moving forward.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's the ideal situation,
right?
Is being able to hunt, have enough spots, enough properties or large enough property where you can have your killing sits and your killing stands and only hunt those in the right times. But also, if it's Saturday morning and you want to be hunting, but the conditions aren't right for those killing stands, you still have other, plan B spots where you can go hunt just to enjoy yourself or to observe, but those are in places that they're not going to screw up your really killer spots. And that's the best situation. So, I hear a lot of guys or, as we talked about last week or the week before on the challenge episode about how, in relation to this exact thing is why I don't hunt many October mornings because I have limited places to hunt. And because of that, I avoid a lot of October mornings, because I don't think the conditions are right or as ideal as it can be. In a perfect situation, I'd have more places to hunt so that I could hunt October mornings in areas where they're lower risk, where I'm not going to mess up my best spots, but I can still get out there and maybe have a chance at something or kill a doe or something like that. So, really the best thing is to get access to more properties so you have these plan B, plan C fun hunts where you maybe aren't going to screw things up, but you still can get out there.
Right. And that's kind of a good transition into one of my mistakes that I used to make back in, probably 2007 is when I started doing it. But everything previous to that, or maybe 2008, but everything previous to that, I would see a good piece of property from an aerial map or some kind of plat book or see it, I'd be hunting on a property and then see deer moving on another property. And I never took the initiative to go out and try to access that property. And I had one of the biggest bucks I'd ever gotten on trail camera come 2 years in a row coming to this through one property, but it was mostly nocturnal. And I knew if I had access to that property, I might have a shot of killing him, but I never took the initiative. And then he disappeared the third year, and I kind of sat back and I go, hey man, the worst thing they can do is tell you no. And I know a lot of other guys, and listeners of this podcast have mentioned in, social media that they kind of making the first step is the hardest, but once you do it, it all becomes easy.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about a lot before, but it's so important. Right. Access, just like in real estate, location. You can't kill them if they're not there.
Right.
That was one of my biggest mistakes too, and it's still a mistake I make. Even though we talk about it here and I preach it all the time, I still sometimes don't go out and do as much as I need to do when it comes to getting new properties. I need more hunting properties right now. I need to get off my tail. I need to knock on some more doors. I got to try to find some spots because I'm lacking. I've lost a couple spots in Michigan. I only have one decent spot. I have 1.5 decent spots in Michigan now. I'm not spending as much time hunting in Michigan anymore, but I still really should get another spot or two in Michigan. I only have one spot in Ohio. What if I lose that spot? I probably should be trying to find another spot in Ohio just in case. But, it takes time, it takes effort, all those things. So I got to get off my butt and do more too. And also this summer, when I'm driving back from Idaho, I'm going to be stopping in Iowa and spending a day knocking on doors there to try to find some properties to hunt this fall, because I'm hopefully going to be drawing a tag this fall for Iowa, and I got to find somewhere to hunt. So
nice.
I'm going to be having to do that work a lot in the next couple months.
Nice. Have you been looking at maps and looking at areas?
Yeah, I mean, I hunted there a couple of years ago. So I know the area pretty decently well, and I've got a few friends there that I go shed hunting with most every year. So I know a couple areas that I want to do some door knocking, and there's some public land I could access to. So I've got some ideas. In the next month or so, I'm going to fine-tune that. I'm going to come up with a list, hopefully have 10 to 15 different properties and landowner names and addresses, have that all lined up. So when I drive through, our plan is to get in like early afternoon. My wife and the dogs will go to a campground, and then I'm just going to spend an evening knocking on 10, 15 different doors and hopefully come up with something. So,
well, good luck, man.
Thank you. If that doesn't work, I'm just going to sneak into your property.
Cool, man. I'll shoot you.
Oh, cool. Perfect. So, anything more on access other than the fact that you'll shoot me if I try to access yours?
No, I mean, and specifically gaining access. I have certain properties where I've talked to the landowner to access a certain tree stand. I'm not allowed to hunt on their property, but I'm allowed to walk down a 2-track and cross a creek and get to a tree stand. So it's even something as simple as that can make a world of difference, so you're not walking all the way through a property as opposed from, you know, I hate to say it, but ruining their hunts potentially as opposed to yours.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of times you won't even be ruining sometimes these people's hunts because they might not even hunt their property. So right. There's lots of times where, like you said, just taking the time to ask can really change how you can hunt a property just by walking through somewhere else.
Yep,
that's a great point. And those landowners lots of times will be a lot more likely to say yes because, oh, you're just going to walk through for 5 minutes? Sure, go for it.
Yep. This guy, he only shotgun hunts. So that's why I have that's why he allows me the access to do it. And, someday, maybe if I prove my worth, I'll be able to bow hunt his property someday too.
That would be nice.
Yep.
Yeah, really nice. So let's, how about another mistake of mine? Here's a couple specific examples where I messed up on a deer. And then kind of a larger thing to take away from it. I don't remember if I told this story. We've talked so much. This is episode 60, so like well over 60 hours of us telling stories. So I might have told this one. I don't know. But tell me if I have. It was November 2nd, I think. No, actually, I take it back. I had hunted November 1st and 2nd on this property in Michigan, and then I went to Iowa for a week, and then I came back. So it was like November 10th or 11th. I came back, and the buck called Leaner. He's a deer that I've talked about before. At this time, he was a 3.5-year-old. It was 2012, I think. And I've been sitting there hunting, and long story short, a couple does came in. He surprised me. All of a sudden, like, it turned around, and 40 yards away from me, this buck was right there, Leaner. And I couldn't move, though, because he was so close. So I was frozen, and then he finally moved away, and he started moving through some tree cover, and by the time I was able to move around, get turned around, he was out of range and moving away. So I had to grunt to him. I think I have told you this story. I'm kind of remembering this now, but long story short, I tried to call to him, and I did a couple grunts. I tried to be aggressive with a couple grunts. He didn't care. He kept moving. So then I'm panicking. He's getting farther and farther away, and I was going to do a snort wheeze. So this time, in my head, I'm like, okay, do a snort wheeze now. But this is the grunt tube that had a snort wheeze tube and then a regular grunt tube. And instead of using the regular snort wheeze tube, which is just a funnel, which amplifies the snort wheeze sound, instead of doing that, I snort wheeze through the regular grunt part with a rated. Oh boy! So it just was like this horrible. Blah, blah. It was really, really, really bad noise, very loud, and it scared the crap out of Leaner, and he took off running. And I didn't see him again that year. So that was a huge mistake I made in a specific instance when I was trying to call to Leaner. I, rushed it, wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and I probably overdid it because I'd already tried a couple calls before that, and he was going, and he wasn't, he didn't give a rip about it. I still kept going. Now, fast forward to the next year, 2013. I'm hunting in the exact same tree stand. It's about the exact same time of year. I think it was, again, like around that November 8th to November 12th. And he pops out again. Now this year, instead of 3.5-year, he's a 4.5-year-old. He's in the 140s. Awesome Michigan buck. And he pops out maybe 100 yards away. And he's feeding down in this cornfield with a couple does. And he starts moving my direction, coming towards the same exact spot where I had, snort wheeze through the wrong way at him. And again, he's cutting away from me, not coming towards my location. So again, I'm getting, nervous. I want him to come my way. He's not coming my way. I need to do something, so I grunt. He looks, keeps going. I grunt again. He looks, keeps going. He keeps going. I grunt again. I think I tried rattling. He keeps going. He gets further and further away. I snort wheezed at him, this time with the right tube. I threw everything I had at him, and he eventually ran off. And it was, it's overcalling 101. I was, panicking. I wanted so badly for this encounter to turn into a shot opportunity that even though I knew I shouldn't, I kept calling, hoping that one of these tricks in my bag would finally work. And, as I think we've talked about before, eventually, you have to realize when enough is enough, and you're going to start hurting your chances of having an encounter with that buck rather than, having something finally work. I think overcalling is something that many of us do. It's easy to do. And it educates those deer. It definitely impacts those deer. And, I had now overcalled to this deer twice from the same exact tree stand, and I never ever saw him again from that tree stand. And I think that's a big part. I bet a big part of that was because he was starting to put things together and realizing that there's a really loud duck sitting in that tree, and it's not somewhere he wants to go.
I have overcalled so many times that it's hilarious to even talk about. I've ruined more hunts because of calling, and I ruined a hunt I shouldn't say I ruined the hunt because he had caught my wind. All right. So he immediately stopped, and this was with a 180-inch typical 12-pointer. And he caught my scent, boom, stopped. He was looking around. He took a couple steps backwards, and he started to walk away. It was the rut, so I rattled, I grunted, I snort wheezed, and the snort wheeze got his attention, and he turned around to start coming back to me, basically just to look in the area. And then I never saw him again. So that time, and then a year later, another deer walked through. He walked through the ozonics, calm as can be, but then he had the wind advantage. Even though he was out of the ozonic stream in my scent stream, I grunted just one simple, and he was gone, because he knew there was no deer up there because he had the wind advantage. And that was with like a 170-inch 8-pointer.
Was that Megatron?
Megatron, yeah.
Yeah, that thing was a stud.
So those were two examples of times where it's like calling statistically isn't going to do the trick. You have to be able to put yourself in the right location, and if a deer is going to have your wind at any point, you can't beat their nose, man. I don't care what you have in the tree with you. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Now the next season I was hesitant to call, right? So I was just, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin it. When the whole time a person should be trying to observe a deer's body language.
Yes.
If they're making a scrape, if they're raking a tree, they're in a little bit more of an aggressive mood, and you might be able to get away with calling at them. But if they're alert and they're coming in with their ears pegged forward and they're really observant, do not call at them. So you have to learn, and I learned the hard way, unfortunately, but you have to learn when to call and when not to call based off their attitude.
Yeah, very true. And then also, also the time of the year.
Yep.
How they're reacting, what the area that you're hunting in is like. In certain areas, if there's tons of hunting pressure, you might want to be even more tentative when it comes to calling because they've heard so many more from other people. So you have to take a lot of factors into consideration before calling. It makes it, if you watch ads on TV, it seems like calling should be, any buck that comes by, I should be able to grunt it right in. But it's not a magic bullet. It's a tool that works, that helps sometimes, but more times than not, it might hurt than it will help. So you need to be smart about when you use that tool and how you use it. And a lot of that comes from just, experience like we've had, over the last decade, seeing these deer and what works and what doesn't work and when we screwed up and when we didn't screw up. For me right now, I've got kind of a general set of rules for myself when it comes to calling. If a shot opportunity isn't going to happen, I would rather have a deer just come in on his own with no calls on my own. So if he's coming my way, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to try to speed him up. I'm just going to let him make his way. But let's say I know for sure he's not coming in. I'm willing to try one. For me personally, I start with a contact grunt. Just do a soft contact grunt. And if that gets his attention and he's intrigued by that, I'll just stop.
Yep.
Now, if the first try doesn't get his attention at all, it seems like he hasn't heard it at all or doesn't care or anything like that, I'll give him one more, but a little louder, a little more aggressive. Just make sure he's heard me. Yep. If that doesn't work still, hopefully that does something. But if that doesn't, then I will try snort wheeze if it's the right time of year. If it's during the rut when a buck should get aggressive and would be riled up by another buck, challenging him, I'll try snort wheeze. And after that, I'm done calling. I might, if it's the right time of year, I might substitute a contact grunt with like a can call for a doe and estrus. If it's that time of year, I might try that too. But kind of, there's always different situations and things might fluctuate. But that's my basic process. If there's a deer that's really far away, I might try rattling instead of that calling sequence because that'll carry farther. But I've decided I'm not going to do the try every single call over and over and over again until he disappears. That's not helping me.
One of the coolest things I've ever seen while in a tree stand was I watched. It was probably late October, so the time for calling was getting good, and I was in wide open timber, so I could see a long ways, and it was fair. I was up high, and I could kind of see all the way around me. All right, so I saw a buck, 100 so yards away from me, maybe even a little further, and I rattled at him. Okay, it got his attention, but I watched this buck make a complete circle all the way around me without closing any distance. He made a giant circle all the way around me. This was before I was using any kind of scent control. Got my wind and came out. The only reason I saw this buck is because the timber was so wide open. Now imagine if you're blind calling and it's in a thicker timber, you're not seeing anything coming through. These deer, it is ingrained in their head to get position before they enter the area, unless they're so horned up they can't control themselves.
Yeah, I think there are a ton of deer that we never see after calling, but they are winding us. They're aware of us. They circle downwind and they wind us, and we never know it. But we spooked a deer without having any idea. I think that happens a lot.
That happens so much.
Yeah, and that's why I do some, but I don't do a ton of blind calling anymore because of that, unless I've got a really good setup where I don't think I'll get winded or where a deer just can't get downwind of me or something like that. So
the only time I will grunt is when I see a buck that I want to shoot.
Yeah.
The only time I will rattle is if I see a buck that I want to shoot, or sometimes I will blind call. And that is only if I am seeing a lot of movement. If you're not seeing a lot of movement, blind calling is not. Movement is kind of an indicator of if there could potentially be other deer in the area.
Yeah.
So
a lot of mistakes that you and me have made, and I'm sure a lot of other people when it comes to calls. Now, before we move on to the next mistake, we need to pause briefly for a word from our sponsors of this podcast, Sitka Gear. Now, on the last couple episodes, we've heard from Dennis Zuck, the whitetail product category leader for Sitka, as he's described why Sitka does what they do and who they've designed their products for. Now, this week, we're tackling one of the most popular questions I get about Sitka, and that is, why is it so expensive? So here's Dennis to answer that very question.
That's a great one, because it costs us so much is the right answer. So when you look at our products, if the trained eye looks into that and looks at the Primaloft materials, the windstopper materials, the high-end zippers we put in our products, materials is the first part of that answer. It's the materials and choosing only the best materials for what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's the wicking layer, whatever it may be. And then it's the details, and it's the process. It's that 2 years of development we put into our products. The details we try to make sure they're the making sure that we're working with the best factories. They cost more. All the things are for us about making sure that the last question we ask in our process is, well, then how much did that cost? And I know that's going to be really funny for folks, and especially funny for all of us people in business trying to make a dollar. But for us, that's really where we believe if that's our first question, then we'll design around that question. And we would rather create products for the fanatical guy. And to do that, we're going to focus on the technology and the best product first and the details first.
So there you have it. Sitka Gear, building gear for whitetail fanatics by focusing on the technology, the product, and the details. Now, back to the show. What about next? You got another one you want to touch on?
I used to play the wind too much.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, I was so afraid of getting busted that I would plan my hunts based on the wind blowing right in my face in the complete opposite direction where the deer were coming from. So now that I know a lot more about how deer move and how terrain affects that, I was hunting completely all wrong. The deer were actually going to be heading away from me. They were going to be using the wind blowing into their face, catching the scent of where they're going, or working a ridge that is, let's say I'm sitting on top of a ridge and I'm looking down at a valley or a creek, and the wind is blowing in my face going up the hill. I would never see hardly any deer because I was afraid my scent was going to get to this bottom and ruin everything. So I was playing the wind, thinking, okay, no deer's gonna bust me in this CRP field or this cornfield because my wind is going right into it, and I'll see them before they see me. Well, they're entering that food source or area, wherever area you're at, from a complete different direction, because these animals are they live and die by their nose in the wind. So it wasn't until maybe 4 years ago that 4 or 5 years ago that it kind of clicked. And now the way I hunt is almost getting busted every hunt. You want to be in a position where if that wind shifts just a little bit, you're screwed. You have to get into a position where a deer is going to come into your area and just barely not bust you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's a big part of the big changes for me too that I've made, that it made all the difference. Is, I think from the way I look at it now is that yes, you have to play the wind, but first and foremost, think about how to play the wind based on how the deer are playing the wind. Because, right, a buck is always, like you mentioned, a buck is always trying to use wind in some way to his advantage to stay alive.
Yep.
So the biggest thing I think we all as hunters need to do, especially if we're targeting mature bucks, is try to understand how mature deer, how any deer really, but especially mature bucks, how they use the wind. So like you mentioned, in a lot of cases, they want wind in their face or crossing their face so they can smell what's ahead of them or wherever they're headed. Or maybe they're using the wind at that moment to scent check for does or whatever it might be. Or maybe they're checking their bed before they move in. We need to understand those. And we've talked about some of those things in the podcast. There's lots of great articles about that. There's lots of resources that we can turn to better understand how deer use wind. But you have to understand that. And then apply that to your stand location and think, okay, don't pick a stand location because you're not going to get winded. Pick a stand location because a buck should be moving past that area because of the wind. He's using the wind in that area to his advantage. And then think about how you can set up in that location where he's using the wind to his favor to just barely cut the corner, like you said, to hopefully not get winded. Because if you're in a place where you're never going to get winded, but no buck's ever going to walk through it at that time, well, that doesn't do you a lick of good.
Right.
So that's been a big thing for me. And we actually, we posted a couple things today on our Facebook page. There's a video with Todd Prignitz that's a really great resource about this. And then we shared an article on Wired to Hunt from Dan Infalt, who has a podcast now where he talks all about using wind and thermals. And those are two really good resources that we'll link to that talk about this exact topic.
The other thing is a deer's nose is so good. They don't need to see a threat. Okay? So they're using these ridges and they're not exposing themselves. All the wind's coming off these ridges down into these bottoms, and this is an example of where I hunt, big ridges coming off, like a food source or a pasture or a CRP field, dropping down into a creek or a valley, and they're just looping like halfway down these ridges or 1/3 up or down off these ridges to where they're not exposed at all, but they can scent check everything up top. And 90% of the hunters are hunting up at the very tops. So they're going to be out of range if you do play the wind correctly. So you got to get in there, let the wind, and this is one of my best hunting spots. I now let that wind hit my back and blow my scent down into the bottom. These deer aren't in the bottom, they're up on the ridges. So they're coming halfway up right into my location. So they're using kind of a 90-degree, 45-degree angle to catch the wind coming off. And by the time they catch me, they're already in my shooting lane.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Those are those killer spots.
Yep, for sure.
It's a tough thing to figure out, but this is something that that Infault mentioned on his podcast, which if you haven't listened to it, make sure you listen to it. There's a link on Wired to Hunt right now. And he talked about how he uses milkweed to understand these types of locations, to understand what the wind is doing and how the deer are using it. So, if you use a little bottle of powder, you spray that and it shows the wind direction, that only shows you what the wind is doing right next to you. But if you use milkweed or a little tuft of cotton or whatever it might be, you can actually watch that drift 10 yards away, 15 yards away, 20, 30, 40, and you can see what it does way far away. And so in like your example right there, if in the past you might have said, oh, I can't hunt here because it's blowing downwind of me, and if a buck comes through there, he'll get my wind. But as it sounds like you saw that these deer, where they do come through the wind, they won't get your wind yet because it blows maybe above them, right? And then drops down. And so if you had milkweed, you could actually see what the wind is doing. So that's another good tip is try a visual wind checker that you can watch in the distance to see how that wind changes in the distance. And you might find locations where you think you're going to be having bucks come downwind, but maybe because of an eddy in the wind or thermals or something else, actually you can get away with things. So that's something to try too.
Yeah, and it's crazy. This year I learned a lot about thermals from a mistake, basically mistakes that I was making, and I almost compare it to like an ocean tide in these bottoms and draws. It just kind of shifts back and forth until finally it heats up and they're gone. But I just would sit there and watch my Ozonics, the same company, or Ozonics owns a company that makes I think it's actually called Wind Tracker or Wind Checker or something like that.
Yep.
And I'm throwing these things out and I'm just watching these little fabrics hover in the air right in between where the cold air and the warm air hit. And they're just floating there, and they're coming back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until finally the bottom sucks out and they drop into the bottom. But thermals, man, and wind, it's one of those things where even if the wind is just a little bit different, you got to be prepared to sit in a completely different tree.
Yeah, and even if you're doing everything you can possibly do from a sun control standpoint, which of course we recommend doing,
yep,
even with all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, still sometimes things aren't going to work exactly right, and so you still need to be playing that wind both ways. So,
right. What's next?
How about this one? Here's a story of when I was pretty young. I don't know, somewhere in my teenage years. I was bow hunting, and I made a mistake that I learned from to a degree at that point, and it's developed in me a kind of a pre-game ritual before every single hunt now. So what happened in this case, and again, I don't know if I told you this, but tell me if I did. I was hunting on the ground, as I think I've told you before, back in the day when I hunted my property behind my parents' house. It's kind of laughable now. My parents wouldn't let me hunt in a tree stand because they were afraid I was going to fall out of the tree. I'm not very coordinated, so I can understand. But me and my dad had made these portable ground blinds that were basically just like ski poles or like a long wooden dowel, like maybe 4 of them, laid out 2-3 feet apart, and then we'd staple like burlap camouflage fabric across the front of them. And so you would roll it up in a big roll, and I'd hike out to where I was going to hunt, and then when I got to where I hunt, I'd stake each one of those ski poles or dowels into the ground in a half circle around where I was going to sit next to a tree. And that camouflage fabric would cover me, to my like shoulders or my chest when I was sitting down, so I could move a little bit. So that was my portable ground blind back in the day, 15 years ago or whatever. I was bow hunting. Early on, I just started, this is early on in my bow hunting career, I just started, and hunting in this bottom, I see the biggest buck I'd ever seen to that point. From what I remember, he was a 10-pointer. He seemed huge at the time. I don't know what that would equate to now, but at that time, he seemed huge. He crosses the creek, comes walking across in front of me. I get my bow ready. I pull the bow, up, so I'm holding it about the height I need to draw back at him. He's moving from my right to my left. I'm pumped up. I've 14 or 15 or however many years old I was. Never seen a buck like this. I'm shaking like crazy. He finally is entering an area where I'm going to be able to get a shot. So I draw back. He takes another step. I can hardly keep my heart from beating out of my chest. And as he's moving to the left, I'm panning my bow along with him, following along with him, waiting till he gets to that opening. As I do this, he's probably 25 yards away, so he was within my range. He's about to step into the opening. I'm drawn back. I'm ready. I move it a little more to the left just to get in that range, and clunk, my arrow hits one of those dowels, because the dowels were stuck up about 8 inches higher than the camouflage fabric all the way around, and I wasn't paying attention to that. I hadn't thought about that beforehand. The arrow hits the dowel, knocks off the arrow rest, and falls off my bow. Clink, clink, clunk. The buck sees me, hears me, runs off. Encounter ruined. What did I learn from that? I learned that you always need to be aware of your surroundings when you're hunting, and about what you need to do and what's going to happen when and if a shot happens, if an opportunity arises. So what I do now is every single time I get into a tree, I practice drawing my bow back, and I practice drawing and moving in each one of the different potential shooting lanes that I have. So I can see, oh, hey, you're not going to be able to move here because there's a tree behind your right elbow. Or, hey, if you try to draw back here, your tree strap to your harness is going to interfere. So now I test that every single time I go out and hunt. I test that out to make sure I'm not surprised by a wooden dowel sticking up and knocking my arrow off, or something else getting in the way. So that's been a big thing I learned. It was a big mistake I made. It probably ruined what would have been a really nice buck for my early years. And now, though, I've learned from it.
Dude, buck fever. I used to get it real bad. It cost me a 210 incher. Cost me shipwreck.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You always steal my thunder. You always one up all my stories. Every story I tell, I saw a 140. That was an awesome buck for me. And then I had an encounter with a 180. And then I talk about a nice 10-pointer. I had a nice encounter with a 210 inch. Like, man, you're killing me with these bucks.
I'm sorry, dude. I guess I didn't realize that. I will stop. I will stop saying numbers.
No, don't stop. Don't stop saying numbers. Just hunt somewhere with worse deer.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm going to be the first guy to ever have the Nine Finger Chronicles, the story of a guy who gave up everything to move to Michigan. Not to hate on Michigan, because I actually have been having a couple conversations with 3 different guys, and they're saying that it's actually getting better up there.
It is getting better, but it's not Iowa.
Right. Anyway. I tell you what, buck fever has cost me a couple deer, and and it's kind of hard. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to experience in order to realize it. You know, if the biggest buck you've ever seen comes through the area and you start shaking and going crazy, you know, I can tell you what to do, how to control yourself, but you're not going to remember it until you've actually had that encounter and learn from it, learn how to handle it. Some guys, you know, I think you wrote an article maybe about big buck serial killers and some character traits. There's certain people who just don't get worked up. They still get excited and love everything, but they become focused instead of blackout, like what I used to do. And now, because I've had those encounters, I've been in those situations, I can remain calm to a certain point.
It's definitely, like you said, one of those things I think that comes with experience. Unless you're just a stone cold killer right off the bat and nothing phases you.
Yeah.
For most guys, you know, me too. I still battle with that. You know, I still get fired up. I'm a very emotional, excitable guy. Like, stuff gets me fired up in general. So I was definitely predisposed to buck fever, and I've gotten better, but I still have to deal with it. I still learn from it. I still rush shots. You know, that's one of my big mistakes. Is I've rushed a lot of shots over the years, and still to a degree do. And you have to kind of learn yourself, I think, and figure out ways to develop processes to better handle it. At least for me, that's how I've tried to attack it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's you can't. You know, I had a whole bunch of good encounters with giant deer before Shipwreck. And I think what caused me is the actual time and effort that I put into that deer. Oh shit, it's happening. Instead of I'm ready. It just kind of, the moment caught up to me, and, you know, like they say in all sports, act like you've been there. And I'd never been there before.
Yeah, and, you know, for some people, like we said earlier, it's just going to be one of those things you have to just get out there, experience it, learn from it, and move on, because there's only so much you can do, you know, practicing beforehand, and that really helps more than it will once you just get out there and do it.
Okay.
So, buck fever, dude. I'm sure both of us will have some case of it this fall, hopefully.
I got buck fever right now.
Yeah.
I'm pumped, dude. I don't know. Something like, I didn't get a hunt a lot because I was returning the favor. But this year, you know, with this trip that we're going on, and this, you know, every time I'm on the treadmill or the stair stepper, I got this picture of, like, I don't know if it's like, I had a dream the other day where I'm running a camera and you're drawing back on a muley that stands up out of the bushes. So it was just, it's so one of those dreams that's really realistic, you know,
That's
one of
awesome.
those. And I was just like, God, I hope that happens.
That would be sweet. I'm pumped that you're gonna be hunting more this year in general, because I want to hear some good hunting stories from you this fall, and I want, especially like when I'm out there, what would be super cool. I'm really hopeful this happens. You know, I'm gonna be coming and hunting in Iowa in November at some point. So maybe it's like November 8th, and either you or me shoots just a slob, like 6.5-year-old, you know, 13-inch G2s, 12-inch G3s, flyers off the twos, split state record, and we'll record a podcast live from the spot. We'll bring our little, like, I don't know, I'll bring my Wi-Fi hotspot, and we'll record out there in the woods talking about it right then and there. That would be pretty sweet.
Well, you'd probably be crying, so there'd be a lot of editing that has to be done. I tell you what, if I shoot a giant deer, I will cry like a baby. I'm not joking. I get emotional.
I do too.
And it's okay. It's okay. Men can cry.
It is
Show
okay.
your emotions.
But
Well, I guess if you ask my dad, no, they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to cook either, but I love to cook.
We won't ask your dad then. Yeah, man, I'm stoked. I'm ready. It's only the middle of June, but gosh, it's gonna be
Every
here for
year.
you.
Every year it gets worse too.
Mm-hmm.
And I still got like I was dialed in with my bow, and then the other day, and my kisser button popped off, and then my peep sight started turning in my string. So now I got to go back to the archery shop and get that adjusted, which means I need to start from scratch again. So, yeah.
That's a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that. I absolutely hate when something like that happens with your bow setup.
Yeah.
So I got one more I want to mention.
All right.
And I made the same mistake 2 years in a row, and it's stupid. And I shouldn't have done it, but I should have learned that first year afterwards, but I didn't. And this is a case where, that first year I was hunting on a Michigan property, and it was on. It was November 1st, and it was just absolutely on during the rut. There were bucks chasing does all over. I think I went out there in the afternoon. I got there at 4 o'clock, and between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, or whenever it was that it got dark at that time, I saw 11 or 12 different bucks. It was just, for that area, it was unheard of. Tremendous number of bucks, several mature bucks, 2 bucks fighting. It was an awesome night, and you could tell, there was a hot doe in the area. But I was scheduled the next day to drive to Iowa to start hunting in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I had the flexibility to do whatever I wanted, but instead of staying there in Michigan where it was absolutely on at that moment, I was like, Iowa's better. I'm gonna go. And I left a very hot situation in Michigan where there was a doe in estrus, and the rut was on. And I left to Iowa, and when I got there, in the area I was hunting, it wasn't on. The does weren't in estrus yet. The bucks weren't chasing yet. It was really slow for like 3 days there. If I had stuck around an extra day in Michigan when it was really on, maybe I would have killed a great buck there. And I never ended up killing a nice buck there that year because I missed out on that hot spot. The rut isn't like 2 weeks straight of nonstop action. It's very staccato. There's a hot spot this day. There's a hot spot maybe a week later. There's just a couple of these big, exciting bursts of excitement in a given area. And if you're on one of those, you really need to take advantage of it. Now fast forward to the next year. I thought I'd learned from this, but then again, the exact same thing happened. I'm out there, it's November 3rd or 4th, I think. I'm in Michigan, and a big buck is locked on a hot doe, and bucks are chasing all around it. I can tell there's a hot doe in the area. I'm watching it like 150 yards away. This buck is locked on her. Plenty of other bucks are trying to get in on the action. I know this is happening right then and there. It gets dark. I have to leave. The next day, I was scheduled to go to Ohio. And again, the temptation of what's in these other states gets me. I packed up and left Ohio, and I left what was an awesome situation there. And if I had stuck it out, maybe things would have been different in Michigan, but instead I went to Ohio. And again, exactly like in Iowa, the conditions weren't the same. The rut wasn't going right then and there. There wasn't a doe in the area that was ready to go, and I didn't see crap for a long time. So twice in a row, I left a situation where the rut was popping and there was a hot doe in the area. And from now on out, hopefully, I'll have the mental strength to never leave a hot zone or hot spot like that again. Because during the rut, if you have that hot doe in the area, if it's really cranking, you need to stick it out in that area while you've got that little excellent opportunity. That was a big mistake I made and a big lesson I learned.
Yeah, I can't say I've never had that opportunity to hunt another state during the rut, but Mark.
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah.
Buck hunting 101, man. Don't leave the hot spot.
I know. And it's even if you're hunting the same state, like in your case, if you get a hot spot, yeah, like you said, it's 101. You can't leave it. And even sometimes that is one situation where it is okay to hunt a little more than you might usually in one stand. Lots of times we talk about that you don't want to hunt the same spot more than a couple times because those deer learn. But during the rut,
all bets are off.
And if that action is super hot, you got to stick it out. You got to be there. It might be a day, a whole day. It might be 2 days. It might be 3 days. But you have to be there when it's on because you don't get that many chances like that.
Right.
So that was a big mistake. Stupid, but I did it.
We're smarter because of it, though, right? From these mistakes that we've made.
It's true. Like we always say, you have to learn from those failures, and we get, like you said, we get better because of it. So that's what this whole episode's about. It's about the things that have made us better hunters. We've screwed up. We've missed deer. We've messed up on deer. We've screwed up hunts. But, sitting here today, I think you and me are much more effective deer hunters because we made those mistakes and because we thought about what those mistakes were and how we could improve upon them. So,
Right. So, I mean, what we want to know is, I always like reading the results of the podcast. So what I want to know from the listeners out there is, to make it interactive, is to tell us what your biggest mistake was and how you fixed it. And if you put hashtag W2H challenge, all those pop up by clicking it. All those pop up in the same feed, and we can read those results, and everybody can read those results. And your mistake might help someone else make that particular mistake. And that's what this is all about: helping each other and preventing stupidity.
So I've got an idea.
All right, let's do it.
So we use the hashtag W2H challenge for our, the challenge that the challenge episode we had a couple episodes ago.
Okay.
And I like the fact that lots of people are engaging with that, sharing their challenges or how they're tackling one of the things we talked about. And so I've been thinking I want to, just like you said, I want to find a way to, get all of you guys listening. You guys can interact with us more on each episode and talk about each topic. So I'm thinking two things. For each episode, I'm going to post, this podcast. We'll post it on the Wired Hunt Facebook page, and we'll have a discussion topic for each episode. And on the Facebook page, you'll go to the post for this episode, and you guys can answer the question, or we can all discuss a certain topic underneath that Facebook post. On top of that, we'll also have the hashtag, like you said, Dan. But what I was thinking is, instead of using the same W2H challenge,
Perfect.
Instead of using that, since we already kind of used that, let's use a different hashtag for each episode. So if you're talking about podcast episode number 60, do hashtag W2H podcast 60.
Nice.
And that way, anytime you guys have a question or you want to comment on something stupid I said in episode 60 or anything like that, just post about it on Facebook or Twitter with hashtag W2H podcast and then whatever number. And then we'll all be able to see it. We'll all be able to, participate in the conversation for that specific episode. And that should make things, I think, easy, and it'll be a cool way to engage on each one of those. So for this one, Dan, like you said, let's hear about what your biggest mistakes were. So on Facebook, we'll post this. We'll be asking you to share your biggest mistakes, and feel free to comment on Twitter too. And it should be interesting. I'm hopeful that you and me aren't the only ones doing some of these stupid things, Dan. I'd hate to be left out in the cold.
For sure.
So I think that's a good place to stop. What about you?
Yeah, I really should stop doing these podcasts with you, because every time I sit here and I record one, then I have to go upstairs, and I really don't want to talk about The Bachelorette, but I'm kind of forced to. I'd rather talk about deer hunting or our mule deer trip or something like that, but instead I got to watch Dora the Explorer or change a diaper or, do dad stuff.
Hashtag dad problems. Yeah, man, I feel for you. But just think, a couple more years and Mac will be your hunting buddy, and then you'll be able to go upstairs and talk big deer with him.
Yep.
So
that's a
fact.
fact.
Cool. That will be pretty cool. So, all right, let's shut this down. And we've got some really cool guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, Dan, that I'm working on lining up. So we should have an action-packed summer leading up to the hunting season here on the podcast. So there we go. Sound effects.
Sound effects. There you go. Perfect timing.
That was good. I like that. I think you can keep your job.
Yes.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, though, another quick update. Wired to Hunt decals are now available with our new logo. We used to have some with the old website design, the old logo. We've got new decals available for sale on the site. So go to wiredhunt.com, click on shop. You'll see those decals. They're pretty cool. I got them on the car now, so check those out if you'd like. Another thing, another reminder, question for all of you. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast on your mobile device, you might want to try that. It's a lot easier. I've gotten feedback from some people saying that, they listen to it when they're actually going on the website and they click play on the website, but then they have to leave and they lose their track or whatever on the site. It's a lot easier if you just have it downloaded to your phone or your tablet device. So go to iTunes or go to the podcast app on your Apple device or Stitcher for your Android device or any other podcast app, and just subscribe. That way you'll get it to your phone right away. You can listen to it when you're driving or whatever, and it's an easier experience. So I'd recommend that if you haven't done that yet. Also, we of course want to thank our partners who help make this show possible. As always, we say this, but we really, really mean it. These companies are supporting us, so we would appreciate anything you can do to support them or let them know that, hey, thank you for supporting the Wired to Hunt podcast, because it's half decent. Those guys are kind of interesting to listen to occasionally. So thank you to Sitka Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Huntera Maps, Ozonics, Carbon Express, Lacrosse Boots, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. Thank you. And of course, thank you to all of you listening. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your time. Hopefully you learned something from this, from us sharing our stupidity and our mistakes. Hopefully that wasn't just boring to listen to, but actually helpful, and maybe you can relate to that too. So thanks a lot. Have an awesome week, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.